Today's William Shakespeare. It's going to be throwing a lot of information at you, and it's going to be a fast-paced presentation. Anyone that's seen me speak in the past knows that's how I work anyway. On top of that, I'm a scouser. People have already requested if I can slow down a little bit. I'll try my best, but there's going to be a slide at the end of the presentation. It's got all my contact details with, and you can request the full presentation. There's a video going to be available as well, so we can send you the video, and I've got a write-up of all this information that can be sent to you, so you'll have the full decode. So anything you do miss, don't worry. So, William Shakespeare, what's in a name? So true will and desire, very important. So this is going to be magical, but it's not going to be circus kind of magic. It's going to be alchemical magic, of course. Very evident in Shakespeare's work. So we're going to start with Thelema, true will and the Book of the Law. Aleister Crowley, very important character. Some say the wickedest man in the world. I think he's probably one of the smartest men in the world, which is why he was given that title in the first place. So do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. And of course, love under will. Keep a reference to this in your mind with the word play. Commitment to the will of God, the purpose for which we are designed, offers freedom to become the person we're meant to be. So Crowley's book was, of course, Liber 418. It's one of his most popular books, and it was where he talked about abracadabra. Now, the power of words are very important because they carry the vibration, they carry the frequency, and it's that forms this reality. It forms formation magic. That Sefer Yetzirah is a perfect example. It is formation, the creation story. So Crowley emphasized the numerological and Kabbalistic significance of abracadabra. The numerical value of abracadabra is 418. This corresponds to the Hebrew letter Chef, meaning fence or enclosure, symbolizing containment and protection. So this is as it says there, the word of double power. So this is what Crowley used to manifest, basically. So what this comes from is a very powerful sigil. And Crowley knew this. It'll be sigils that you'll recognize in everything because it comes from nature, it comes from creation. So the practice of using abracadabra in meditations and rituals is aimed at achieving one's true will. So this is all about design, about intention. So we have these alchemical magicians who, of course, run the world stage. Now it's all about the intention of that individual. It's not about magicians and witches being this and that, the bad or evil. It's all about intention of that individual person. So that's what Crowley knew in his intentions. People got confused about a lot of the time. And of course he was labelled and he was demonized because he held so much knowledge. So Babylon, this is the seal of Babylon. It's the 7-7 and the 7-7 Kabbalistic writings of Aleister Crowley. So Babylon, known as the Scarlet Woman, the Great Mother, or the Mother of Abominations. Within Shakespeare's work, she's known as the Dark Lady. That's Babylon in Shakespeare's work. So this is where Crowley's really learned all this from. He's got it, of course, from the teachings of John Dee, Edward Kelly, and people of that time. So The Vision and the Voice is the book by Aleister Crowley. Chronicles the mystical journey of the author as he explored the 30 Enochian ethers, originally developed by John Dee and Edward Kelly in the 16th century. Now, 777 is a very important number. It's probably the most important number in Kabbalah to recognize. When you see this play out in certain events, you can guarantee it's Hermetic magic being used, which we'll prove throughout this as we did in the previous talk with Brilko. So this is obviously connected to the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn and the Rosicrucian Order, which they always said there would be a time that they would come to the surface and the knowledge they held would come to light, which I think is probably where we're up to now. That's probably where we are. So a lot of the Rosicrucian themes are playing out, and I'm seeing it playing out in a lot of events, and it's all Hermetics. So Hermetic Kabbalah, the two most important numbers for Crowley was 777 and 418. This is what he used for his alchemical magic. So as you can see from his sigil, he uses the oval of the Vesica. This is the vulva, the vagina, whatever. This is creation. It is birthing his manifestations. He's also used the T of the Tau cross because it was, of course, Egyptian was alchemical magic. Egypt was known as Alchem. It was the first place alchemy started. And then we've got the Great Circle, which is the monad to Crowley. It's the monad. It's the central eye, the source of all creation. So this is really his sigil, and we'll notice he's got the number 13 at the bottom. This is to represent those 13 months in the menstrual cycle of the sacred feminine. So the original measure of time, that came from the moon. That's where that menstrual cycle comes in, because it is the measure of time. That's where we got it from. So it wasn't actually the sun we measured it with, it was the moon. That was where we first originally measured time. So this is the most important sigil in all my research, and it sums up everything. We're literally looking at Da Vinci's Mona Lisa painting through this image. This is literally what it is. So John 21:11 says, so Simon Peter climbed back into the boat and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153. So of course these are the ratios that create the Vesica, 265, 153. So we have 265 units in height, 153 in width, and that creates the 418 from Crowley's Magic. That is where it comes from. So that's why he uses the 418. It comes directly from the Vesica. So the central oval, or the almond, the mandala, that is where the lens is. It's the lens of light. And with this reality, light is the most important thing in this entire reality. It's how we perceive everything around us. So of course, if it's bad light, good light, you're living in heaven, you're living in hell. It's how you perceive this reality. If everything's bad and everything's negative, that's how you're going to live your life. Or you can live it the other way, of course. So Matthew 4:18 is where the story of the fishermen actually starts in the Bible. So the Bible is full of numerical coding, and they give us the script all the way through it. So where they give us this in John 21:11, so 21:11, that is the numerical coding for carbon. And then 4:18, of course, the story of the fish starts with Simon called Peter and Andrew, his brother, and they're casting the net. So what we'll have this is the boat, and they're casting the net either side of the boat. So that's where the 153 fish comes into play. So these are the ratios, and this is the most important sigil, and it's something that you'll see right the way through this presentation in all different forms. So we start with exactly what we've just shown is the Vesica, the unification of opposites. Shakespeare had twins. Now, if you know the story of the twins and how it all takes form, Rome was founded by twins, Romulus and Remus. We have, of course, the Twin Tower unification in 2001, and from the Twin Towers fell, we had the One World Trade Center was formed. So this is the unification of opposites. It's one world, one love, one, so on and so forth. They want one. They want to unify it. So this is where the magic starts, and this is where we can prove the magic, of course. So Judith Quinney, she lived for 77 years and 7 days, which is equal to 4,018 weeks, 4018. Now it's exactly Crowley's exact magic. So this is the twins. These are characters, of course. These are not real people. These are characters. So we've got Judith and we've got Hamlet. They're the twins. They are characters. So what they've got is the alchemical magic playing out right the way throughout their coding. And you won't just see it here, you'll see it with Hamlet as well. So this is one of the opposites. This is the female, of course. We have Judith. So this information, when you're checking the time between dates, this is something that's good to do with your own life. This is how you figure these numbers out, really. Really significant dates in your life is where your life path will play out, and it'll play out in these geometric patterns, basically. And they'll play out in cycles. So if you know the numbers and you can recognize them, you can work out your entire life path, basically. It's what Nostradamus and people like that have always done. So that's Judith Quinney. She offers us the Hermetic Kabbalah code. It's there, it's official, and it can't be altered. That is what it is. But with them, they were also baptized. Now that's a key with them. They were baptized. So of course, Shakespeare's code, as Alan Green describes, is formed around St. John the Baptist for many different reasons that we'll get into. But that 33rd day of the year is important because, of course, it's the 33rd bones in the spine. It's the hermetic coiling of the dragon energy, serpent energy, of whatever you want to label it. All comes down to the basis of male and female and the androgynous form that is in the human body. So Hamlet offers us something completely different. So he was obviously baptized with his sister on the 33rd day of the year, but he was also born, he also died on August the 11th, 1596, and he died at 11 years, 6 months and 9 days old. Now that is one of the most important numbers in Hermetic Kabbalah. You'll know with Shakespeare's sonnets, they were published in 1609. So look out for that 169 and the 196. Them numbers play out in everything. And it is because of the yin and yang. It's that opposite of the male and female or energy. So August 11th, it marks the creation of humanity in Mayan cosmology. 11 years, 6 months, 9 days is equal to 138 months, which is in contrast to the 13.8 billion years. But this number also plays out with Venus, of course, with the Earth-Venus cycle of the 13.8 revolutions. Shakespeare's sonnets then published in 1609, and we've got the 6 and 9 that represent the light and dark, the sun and the moon, the day and the night. So again, the Mayan story starts with the hero twins. So this is what they're trying to give us. They're trying to give us clues of what the coding actually is and how it's formed. It comes from them twins. So as I just said, with the Venus rose, we have the 13/8 orbital resonance. The rose cross, it's fivefold symmetry, and it's all based on these frequencies, and it is orbital resonance. As I say, the resonance is the key, it's the frequency and the vibration. So whatever alignments are taking place above us, our life will play out to that alignment. So I do decodes, all the events that I possibly can over the past 4 years. I've been decoding to find these patterns, and we've got huge success, of course, with it. So this is how all of our lives play out. It's not just famous people or PBC or anywhere else. It's everybody has this life path, this pattern. So it's Hermetic Principles of the Rosicrucian Order, of course, Hermes, Mercury. It's a neutral force, and this is why Hermes is the main character for them. This is who they worship the most, or is one of the top pantheon of gods kind of thing. Of course, we're looking at a Freemasonic code, really, is where it really stems back to, and before that, the Templars, and they got it from Islamic teachings. This is all thousands and thousands of years old, and there's a core to it. So the creation of humanity then, it was August 11th, 3014 BC. The raised up Sky Lord caused 3 stones to be set by associated gods at lying down sky. First 3-stone place, because the sky still lay on the primordial sea, it was black. Now that is the same story, as you can probably tell, as the 3 pyramids in Egypt. We have the 3 stones that were set in place from the primordial waters. So the Mayan cosmology is exactly the same. Well, it's the same all around the world. Any culture that you look into, it's all the same. So the centre of the 3 stones centred the cosmos. So what they're talking about now is the axis mundi, of course. It's the centre of the pillar, or the spear even, through the centre of the earth. It's our pole. So Hunahpu and his brother were conceived when their mother, Quick, daughter of one of the lords of Zabalba, spoke with the severed head of their father, Hun. The head spat upon the maiden's hand, which caused the twins to be conceived in her womb. So now this is a very familiar story, which we'll go into now, and we'll start breaking up in the links. So of course our DNA is arranged in these intertwined ropes, exactly the same as the show of Hermes and the Caduceus. This is what they're getting at, it's a story of creation. So according to the mythology, it was created when Hermes threw his staff at 2 snakes in an attempt to end the fight. So this is where you have, in Glastonbury they'll talk about Michael and Mary, it's exactly the same as our dragon lines, the coil. They have the red and white dragons in Glastonbury. It's our DNA structure, what they're getting at. And it's a creation story, obviously. This is what everything is based on, is creation. So I don't really want to use this as the most perfect example for William Shakespeare, but this was very revealing. So of course I'm saying this is all related to Leonardo da Vinci. So of course they had Leonardo DiCaprio play Romeo in the film. And then it's also based around the St. Clairs and Rosslyn. And of course they had Claire Danes, St. Clair's ordainment. So it was all there, they were putting it in our face the entire time. But what they did is they really shown it with Mercutio through the characters in this film. And obviously they made Mercutio very transgender, because he is Hermes, Mercutio is Mercury. So they were made to look that way. So you might have actually just seen this recently play out with the Olympics, the transgender theme. And of course Leonardo da Vinci was making headlines. People were causing the uproar, saying it was a representation of the Last Supper, which I actually agree with, I think it was. Because they put Leonardo on the world stage, which of course we know is very important to William Shakespeare. So there's Mercutio, Mercury, Hermes, one of the named characters in the play with the ability to mingle around those of both houses. So again, there's another clue for us. You can mingle with both houses, you get on with them both. We have a similar story play out in the Harry Potter films, which of course are all based on alchemy, Philosopher's Stone, Order of the Phoenix. And you have Hermione, she's the central character between Ron and Harry. So it's the same thing, it's the exact same thing, and it always got to revolve around that trinity that is created from the 2 polarity forces. So being the messenger of the gods, Mercury is the agent of exchange between the 2 genders. Mercury's energy is ubiquitous, it connects and makes principles communicate. One can see Mercury as androgynous, being that represents both genders at once. So if you're familiar with Leonardo's coding, a lot of Leonardo's work is based on androgyny, it's all androgynous form. The Mona Lisa, for example, just the way she turns simply in the painting, one's masculine and one's feminine. Leonardo did this a lot, and so did a lot of other Renaissance artists, Michelangelo, Raphael, they would all implement it into their works. So in alchemy, Mercury is considered the central substance. Alchemists believe that Mercury was animating spirit that made transmutation possible, and this is all to do with the manifestation, of course. This is what Crowley was working with, is Hermetic Principles. So we've got Mercury as one of the 7 metals in alchemy, along with gold, silver, copper, lead, iron and tin. So the characters in Romeo and Juliet give us a lot of clues. we have Romeo, Juliet, Count Paris, Mercutio, Tybalt, the Nurse, Rosalind, Benvolio, and Friar Lawrence. So of course we have House Montague and the Capulets then. So we've got Romeo, they're given as the Empire, there's Rome, so there's the Empire. Of course, John Dee founded that term for the British Empire. He wanted the continuation of the Empire. Then we have Count Paris. Now that wouldn't actually make sense on its own until you connect it with Rosalind. So if you've seen Da Vinci's, the Da Vinci Code, read the book or seen the film, the rose line in that is based on the Paris Meridian. So this is what it's the Rosicrucian coding. It's exactly what this is. Benvolio is the same meaning as William. It means true will and desire. That's Benvolio's name. So for me, the most important thing in this sequence or in this play was the Montagues, family of the Montagues. They're the top priority in all my research, and it's because they connect with the Montagliari, which is Mona Lisa's family. So we've got Romeo, Lady Montague, Lord Montague, Benvolio Montague. So these names are actually linked to the Knights Templar, some of the original Grand Masters, Pierre de Montagut and his brother Guerin de Montego. They were the Grand Masters of the Hospitaller and the Knights Templar at the same time. So the Montagues are very, very much implemented into this coding. Pay attention to the coat of arms. The coat of arms for the Montague explains everything in that little detailing of those lozenges. So the Montague family, of course, Knights Templar, very, very important family, and the link to the St. Clairs of Rosslyn. That's the more important thing about it. So we have the 3 lozenges, and then 3 lozenges fit inside the Vesica. So this is where we start seeing another coding play out then through the Montagues of why they actually hold that title of Montague. Of course, it represents the same as the 3 pyramids. So the Montague name, it means a mountain reflecting in a lake, and this is exactly what the pyramids are based on. The pyramids are based on the creation of mountains, rising from the primordial water. It's earth, it's Gaia. So they're talking about a story of creation, and they've used the Vesica to show it, and the Vesica is, of course, creation. So the ancient coat of arms of the Gherardini is on the left, which is very reminiscent, of course, of Giza. Of course, we even have the lion, which some people will connect to the Sphinx. And then we've got the Montagliari of the Firenze, which is the more modern version. So they've carried something with them. The Gherardini family are one of the most important families that are actually still around today and still functioning on a very high level. House Gherardini, they go all the way back to the first 5 Roman emperors. They're directly related to Nero. Now this is Mona Lisa's family, of course. She was known as Del Giocondo later on through her marriage, but her original name is Gherardini. The Gherardini are also the Fitzgeralds, so they've gone from a Roman emperor to a president in the space of a couple of thousand years, and they've stayed at the top of the pile that entire time. But of course we have important names connected to the Gherardini. The Medici, which is, you can tell with Medicis, they are medicine, it's medics, they use the Hermetic symbol of the 2 coiling serpents. If you go to Italy, of course, they're all called apothecaries, and they use the symbol of Hermes for their medicine. So that's the Medicis, that's where we get it from, it's medics. And then we have House Bardi. So of course we're looking at people like Alan Green presenting the Bard Code. So the Medicis, the Bardi family, House Amadei and Gherardini, one of the most important figures in their entire sequence when you go to see them is Orpheus the Bard. So this is another clue into where these families have actually took it from. So when you look at William Shakespeare's coding, it goes back to Veneto and the Dukes of Milan, Venice, the merchants of Venice, all goes back to the Italians. So this is where it's come from. They're the power players, really. If you look back in this country, we lost everything through the Reformation and dissolution of the monasteries anyway. All the power went back to Italy. So they're the top families. We've got the Gherardini of Florence, Veneto, Paris and Ireland, and the Irish branch are the Fitzgeralds. That's official. They come through with Otto Gherardini, and they first landed in Wales. Then they would travel through, make their way to Ireland, and of course they are what we know them today through JFK and things. So they're one of the top players, and they come from the Roman emperors, directly from the first 5 Roman emperors. So we're looking at an empire, a story of the empire. And of course Mona is considered to be androgynous herself. So Let's go back to the beginning to start off the monad, the creation story. So this is, in Hinduism, the center point, the dot, is the bindu. It's where all creation is formed. It's the source of all things. The supreme being, it's divinity. It is the totality. So this is in the beginning. This is how it forms, the great circle. Everything is formed underneath this great circle. And it is, of course, the monad, which is be a part of John Dee's work later on in time. So to start this, we need to look at what it is. It's genes, genesis, genetics. Of course, we've looked at the DNA, how it spirals, the serpent energy, and how it coils, and it's procreation. So, Genesis, be fruitful and multiply, is what we're told. That is procreation. Be fruitful and multiply. God, on the sixth day of creation, created all living creatures and man in his own image, both male and female. God then blessed the couple, told them to be fruitful and multiply, and gave them dominion. So Islamic traditions have a slightly different. Adam is descended from paradise and ends in Sri Lanka, and Eve descends to Jeddah and in Arabia. After a separation of 200 years, they meet near Mount Arafat and begin conceiving children. The first two sons, Kabil and Habil, which I'm guessing will be Cain and Abel in their story, they had a twin sister. Each son married his brother's sister. Kabil subsequently killed Habil, and later Shif was born with a sister. And now it's the twin story, and Islam actually teaches that story. It's something that our creation story doesn't tell. But they're all the same. It doesn't matter where you go. It's all the same. And a lot of our traditions have actually come from Islam anyway. It's from what the Templars brought back through the Crusades. That's where a lot of our knowledge really started to progress, is after those Crusades and what they brought back. So, of course, we start with procreation. So we have the procreation sonnets. That's where we begin, and that's Shakespeare's sonnets. So he starts with procreation. So it's the fair youth, of course, and he's in his heyday. He's having his prime time. He's a bit of a boy, and he's playing around, of course. So the procreation sonnets, Shakespeare's sonnets, numbers 1 to 17. So it's all about reproduction, of course. It's male and female. This is the biological process, and it is where we create, obviously, our offsprings. So this is the formation of the Vesica, and we're staying with the same theme as the twins, Hamlet and Judith. It's all the same. So we start with procreation. So what's in the name? That's what a lot of people always ask. I think the most common question with Shakespeare is, who wrote Shakespeare? That's what people really want to know. Who wrote it? And I never asked that question. It was always, what is it? There's got to be something else. I didn't trust what other people were giving me. I had to go and find my own way. So what's in the name in William Shakespeare? If you can use your imagination and maybe start connecting some dots and thinking of if they were going to create a coding, and it was Hermetic coding, and it was based on procreation, man and woman, the story of creation, what would they base it on? So William is Wilhelm, it's desire. So it's related to the German name Wilhelm. And the Proto-Germanic name is a compound of willow, will, wish, desire. And helmet is helm and helmet. So I'm sure maybe you can start to see where this is going. Willpower. Will within philosophy is a faculty of the mind. Now the mind is power, it's mind over matter, and that's very true. This is what they know. This is what alchemical magicians know. It's mind over matter, which is how they can shape this reality, this physical reality, into their own favour. So within philosophy, it's the faculty of the mind. Will is important as one of the parts of the mind, along with reason and understanding, and it's considered central to the field of ethics because of its role in enabling deliberate action. So the name William is related to Wilcock, Wilcox, and Wilcoxon. So as I said, you can probably guess where this is going. So Sonnet 1, the very first line, we're given William Shakespeare's name. It tells us, from fairest creatures we desire increase. So of course, William is desire. He gives us that in the very first line of Sonnet 1. So to tell us who it is and what it's about. Now, what I'm not going to do is, because I know a lot of people who study Shakespeare, I'm not going to go over all the same information that you've probably been given over time of all the sonnets and all the plays. I'm sticking to the core of what I see inside this information. So, not just any Tom, Dick or Harry. Of course, William, Will, Willie, Wilhelm, Willem, Peter, Johnson, Richard, Dick. Now, these were all names that were given as a symbol of power. Today, it's more of a mockery. People say Richard and Dick, and it's more of a mockery. It's a bit of a joke. Not back then, it wasn't. Back then, it was a very important name, and it was a powerful name, and that was the key. We're looking at people who were gaining power, and they were trying to keep hold of power and increase it as well, worldwide. These are the people who were travelling the seas, and they were trying to divide the lands. So we have Shakespeare and Shakeshaft. The spear is the symbol of victory, rulership, and potency. So again, it's procreation, it's potency. So we've got to be able to bear offspring, of course. So now these next few slides, feel free to have a little giggle, but try and keep it together if we can, because there's some a few different things coming up. Bell end, right? So now this is actually a colloquial word, believe it or not. It is a colloquial word in English and Irish. It's in the dictionary, and it actually has so much more meaning than you can imagine. So Wilhelm, helmet, tip, head, penis. This is, of course, bell end. So when you think of the bell, rings, vibration, think of how it works, use your imagination kind of thing. So this is because the male and female genitalia is exactly the same. It's no difference. So we are universal. We are one song at the very beginning of all this, and we are together as one. So, as I just said, use the imagination of orgasm, of how that is so powerful and how that's used in sex magic, creation magic. They use that as a powerful tool. So what they're literally doing, without being too vulgar, is they are manifesting as they orgasm, and that is what they do. And this is how they manifest in this reality. That's the truth of it. So this is why it's obviously, we've got the glands, the head of the penis, and it's all the same, it's exactly the same things, but it's the foreskin or the shaft of the penis. So as I said, Shakespeare is Shake shaft, it's exactly the same. So you've got to start thinking and start using our minds to see a different perspective of what William Shakespeare could possibly be now. So then we have the erogenous zones, which is procreation. So then erogenous zones are vibratory stimulation, positive correlated with increased sexual desire. An erogenous zone comes from the Greek eros, meaning love, and it is genus, meaning born. It's our genes, so it's all there. It's a creation story. So before we actually differentiate between male and female, we are all the same. That's how it forms. So the ancient Egyptians, the created gods' association with legends, thus the world of, more specifically, Egypt, was created in diverse ways according to different parts of ancient Egypt. So to explain how Atum did this, the myth uses a metaphor of masturbation, with the hand he used in this act representing the female principle inheritant with him. Now, if you remember from the main cosmology story earlier on, it's about the head, or the tip of the penis, spits into the female hand, and that's how she becomes pregnant in the main cosmology. It's exactly the same thing. So their story is exactly the same, and the three stones rise, and this is the center, the axis point. So that was the axis point for the Mayans. This is the axis point for the Egyptians, of course. So they all held that the world had arisen out of the lifeless waters of chaos called Nu. They would also include the pyramid-shaped mound called Bem Bem, which was the first thing to emerge from the waters. Now, I recently went to Switzerland only last week, and I visited CERN laboratories. It's been on my mind for a long time, because what they're basically doing is breaking open creation. They're breaking open God particles and atoms and nuclides. So when you apply that to the ancient Egyptian story, they've done it all before, because you've got atom and nu, and you've got atoms and nuclides. But on top of that, then Giza is also based at coordinates of the speed of light, which is exactly what CERN's doing. They're colliding particles together at the speed of light. So this is exactly what they've done. It's the same creation story. Creation doesn't change. It's never going to alter. Chances are we've probably been more advanced in the past than we are now, and that's probably the truth of it. So that's, on top of that, then, to back it up, of course, Egypt is the original place. It was known as Alchem, so it's where chemistry was first formed. So they've got it all. It's their creation story is literally there, and it's a beautiful story if people really understand it. So these elements were likely inspired by the flooding of the Nile River each year. Receding flood waters left fertile soil in the wake. So again, fertility, it's an important story, and it's always been. And it's in nature, it's in human beings. We are nature, we're all connected as one. Obviously, we've lost that connection a little bit over time, but the truth is we are all connected as one. So we play out in the exact same way, and it's a fertile soil. So this image on the right, on the right-hand side, is the embryology, the primordial phallus. So now that is microscopic, that is inside, that's before it takes form into a penis or vagina. It's that's how it takes form. So what you're basically looking at is the mound that's rising from the primordial, except for it's happening inside. It's happening inside the woman, inside the sacred feminine, of course. So this is why the story is so important. But it's not just about the female. I see a lot of people these days that are talking about the females rising, and it's all. We need a balance in energy, and that's what we have been missing that entire time. We've missed the balance. So this is. I know this looks very painful to the men sitting in the room. So it's also a case for the immature male analog, the immature glans penis. So there's the head, there's the shaking spear, it's the tip, it's the willem, it's the helmet, That's exactly what it is. So Willie Shakespeare, generative power in nature, the virile member. So that is William Shakespeare, and that's when you start putting it all together as a procreation story, and you can see it starts making far too much sense. Crowley's signature was of a penis. That's how much he knew this story so well. He knew it was Hermetic Kabbalah, and he knew it was in Shakespeare's coding. Now, I know we have a lot of people in the room who probably know John Michel personally, but I think John Michel knew this. I think he knew a lot more than he's put in his books. Whether he did or not, I don't know, but when I've researched his work, it's very much a lot like the Rosicrucian work I'm studying. So John Michel's work, I understood perfectly when I picked his books up, and it was because it was exactly the same as Leonardo's, which is Templars, Rosicrucian, and Hermetic. So I don't know what John Michel knew, but I feel like he knew this for sure. So Crowley knew it. He knew what it was all based on. It was the Shakespeare, its creation. So obviously Crowley's signature is a very interesting one. We have the crescent moon because Crowley saw this time now, the Aeon of Horus is what they called it, or the Age of Aquarius is what they were all preparing for, basically, and we're here. Aquarius is about to settle. Pluto settles in Aquarius from November, and the new age begins, and we're here. So it looks like it's time for that information to come to light. So what Crowley was doing here, what we can see, he's put the testicles in, of course, but that's not necessarily what he's shown. He might actually be showing as well the fact that that is a part of the Vesica. It forms the Vesica. So this is the Washington Monument on the right, and on the left, St. Peter's Square, Vatican City. So this is exactly what Crowley's showing in that image. He's showing the penis, he's showing the testicles, or it could be the female taking form because they're both the same. And this is what he knew. He knew it was both the same. So the Washington Monument has a height of 169 metres. So as I said, remember the sonnets, 1609, 169. Remember these numbers, can keep them imprinted and just pay attention to what they actually represent as we go through. The construction started on 4th of July 1848, an important date. We've just used it in the UK for the general election. That election took place 666 days after Queen Elizabeth died, which is interesting. And the coordinates, of course, for the Washington Monument really show us what it's based on. So the coordinates are 77. As I said, look out for those 77s. They'll play out in everything. And this is a magic being created. It's creation magic now on a world stage in a very popular places. You can imagine how many people walk through the Vatican City, through St. Peter's Square every day. So, of course, they're drawing energy in. That's what it's all about, and they can create from it. They're masters of it. It's worthy noting that the Pentagon building is 77 foot 3.5 inches, the same as the coordinates for the Washington Monument. Now the Pentagon, of course, think of it in terms of magic, the Pentagon, the pentagram, it's a magical symbol. So the Vitruvian Man, Leonardo, also focused on the penis and the navel. So he was, well, the Vitruvian Man, of course, we talked about this in my last presentation. So we have the circles focused on the navel, squares focused on the phallus. So the circle is heavenly, it's female, it's divine. The square is rough, rugged, it's male, it's earthly. One represents St. John the Baptist, one represents St. John the Divine. So we've got St. John the Baptist as the earthly figure, of course. But what these really showing is the omphalos. So this is the axis mundi, and it's the center point. Everybody has a center point. Rome did, the Mayans did, the Egyptians did. We all have a center point. Our center point, our axis mundi is Glastonbury Tor, which I haven't got time to go into now, but it is in the Vitruvian Man book, the full decode on Glastonbury. So we've unlocked that more than has ever been done before. It's a very interesting decode. So, omphalos, you have a clue in there with the and the aum. Of course, this is sonic representation of the divine, and it's sound, it's a vibration, as I said, when we're talking about orgasm and the vibration. This is exactly what it is. It's Om, and it's the sound of creation. The sacred syllable, Om, is the primordial sound from which all of the sounds of creation emerge. Vitruvian Man is the image of the two Johns. Remember the 96 and remember the 69. Now, St. John the Baptist represents the 69, St. John the Divine represents the 96. And this is with St. John's feast day. St. John the Divine's feast day has only just took place yesterday. It's the 269th day of the year with 96 days remaining. It's also the date that an alignment takes place at Rosslyn Chapel at 269 degrees yesterday on the very same date. So they've got all this coded in there. And it's, the Vitruvian Man is a layout. If you put that on the blueprints of Rosslyn Chapel, it's perfect. Of course, Sinclair's know exactly what this is. So the navel is the axis mundi. All life comes into the world through the world axis. It's diffused from the primordial mound by the holy mountain. So this would be relatable to Mount Kailash as well, or of course the Great Pyramids, the Mayan pyramids. Any pyramid mound, even over here with Silbury Hill, is a very, very important place. They're all mounds, they're primordial mounds coming from the primordial waters. So it's the cosmic axis, the world pillar in the center of the world. The axis marks the point of connection between heaven and earth. As we just said, with the square and the circle, that's what Da Vinci's given us, is that heaven and earth connection between the two. It's the heavenly and the divine nature with the earthly spirit, or the material aspect. So it's a stairway to heaven, the gate of heaven. So this is all on a microcosmic display in the human mind as well. The stairway to heaven, of course, Jacob's ladder. You climb the stairway, you become enlightened, so on and so forth. So it links everything to the great architect. So my book is called The Great Architect's Blueprint, and it's because everything plays out to an architectural design in this reality. Everything is formed perfectly if we can pay attention to it. So these are those primordial mounds and primordial phallus. Of course, you recognize the Ben stone. So the Ben, I've spoke about this in the past, with the Ben stone, you can relate it to the mountains in Scotland, such as Ben Nevis. The clue is there. So of course in Wales then, it's the pen. So we have the penis, the pen, penis, Ben stone, it's all the same, it's the penis rising. It is from the primordial mound, and it's actually, it's in all our wordplay. It's all there, we just got to pay attention. So this is really relatable, other than the fact that it is the spear that represents the axis mundi. So that is really an important feature in Norse mythology, or Norse cosmology. It is the axis mundi, it's the center of the world, and it's Odin's spear. So this is all based on cosmology, it always has been, it's always based on astrology and astronomy. Odin is related to Orion, so of course that'll play out in much later time, and we have the volcanut symbol of the pyramids. They also have their pyramid symbolism, which always made me think, where did them pyramids actually come from then? What was the creation story? So we carry on with what's in the name, Leonardo da Piero da Vinci. Leonardo was born with the name Leonardo da Piero da Vinci. He was named after the lion. He's the son of Peter. So his name literally translates to Leonardo, son of the rock of victory. So of course we said before, the phallus, the spear, the shake shaft, it's a sign of power and victory. A lion's mane is a symbol of virility. Leo is the virility of the sun, which brings vitality and life. Peter means rock, as in hard, used as a symbol of generative power. Again, Peter was one of those names, like Richard, Dick, it's a sign of power. Vinci means victory, veni vidi vici, of course, you'll know this saying. Vinci means to win. It is said that all men enter victorious and they leave feeling diminished, if you can understand what that means. The victory of the phallus over the power of the evil eye may be represented by the phallus ejaculating towards the disembodied eye. So this was a symbol in ancient Rome. That's where they really used it, the Romans. They used the phallus as a symbol of protection. So that's Leonardo's name. It's exactly the same as William Shakespeare. They've got exactly the same meaning behind them. Their names mean exactly the same thing, and it's based around the phallic symbolism of power, rulership, domination, virility, strength, masculinity, victory, fertility, potency, life, death, and resurrection. Now, victory really means something to me, is because I've done a lot of travelling in the Isle of Man, so you be aware of the TT races and the Victory Lap. Isle of Man also have Victory House. Isle of Man is also the place of the Freemasons Lodge that was founded on Leonardo da Vinci's birthday, and it's called the Isle of Mona, of course. They have Castle Mona, they have Lodge Mona, based on Da Vinci's entire coding. The Isle of Man is one of the most important places. So victory is there. They've got victory. It's because it's phallic symbolism, of course. So this is all relatable then to the Egyptians and the story of Osiris. So he was cut into 14 pieces and scattered them all over Egypt. His wife Isis received all of them except for one piece, which was his penis, which was swallowed by a fish. So of course the Vesica Piscis is known as the bladder of the fish. This is what they're telling us. They're telling us the same story. So the penis is swallowed by the fish. What if the penis represents a primordial phallus? It represents a Ben stone. Then that means that we must have the geometry of the Vesica Piscis around the pyramid in some form. It's got to be there. And that's really what the key is. And that's something that we'll break open at the end of this. So the world's creation narrative with a divine phallus is attributed to the critical role, underscores the potency and autonomy of the male organ. So again, it brings us back to that creation story of Atum. It's a masturbation, and this is why the phallus is so important. So that's Osiris' story. So this is why Robert Edward Grant and Alan Green are linking it in. They've not got to the core of what William Shakespeare actually means or what the coding actually is. They've got some of the surface level stuff, and don't get me wrong, they've got really good information. They've got information I don't think other people would have ever found. They were meant to have found it, and they were meant to have shared it. But this is why it's taken them to this, and of course the Vitruvian Man is also cut into those 14 segments. So the Ankh, the sign of the Ankh, is typically associated with life, initially symbolized with the penis sheath. The sign underwent a series of metonymical transformations, morphing from a direct phallic representation to a symbol of life. So these are officially, they are hieroglyphs. You've got the one for husband and to become erect of the Benben stone. So that is the symbol of the Benben stone. So as you'll see, it's the earth because the feet are walking, it's grounded on the earth, and the Benben rises from the earth. It is earth, it's a mountain. So Mona's coding, of course, Mona is the Mon, she's the mountain, the Madeline, the Monroe, she's the mound. So deities like Osiris were frequently depicted with the erect penis, which became a symbol of life-giving power. So as we started, it's a procreation. So again, it's all the same theme, and it's in every story of creation. So this is what Shakespeare is following. They're following really ancient teachings. They've just done it in a really developed way. And of course, people will say it's a bit of a con, a bit of a scam, but it's up to people to find it. It's an important story. So Osiris was cut into 14 pieces. The Vitruvian Man was cut into 14 segments, and each sonnet has 14 lines, all except for sonnet 126, of course. As I said with the number 77, to pay attention to that, the sonnets are broken up into two parts. Now we do have up to sonnet 126 and then 28 sonnets after that taking us to 154. But in half it's 77 and 77, that's how they've set the sonnets up. So sonnet 126 is the only one with 12 lines. May time disgrace and wretched minutes kill. Sonnet 99 also has 15. Alan Green's broke open this coding. Some of you may have seen it. If you haven't, go and study Alan Green's work because it is really good and he's done some really good things, especially in terms of the coding in the sonnets. It's not something I've so much focused on myself because I work with Hermetic Order through Da Vinci's work. So I'm breaking it open in different ways, completely different ways than they have. So the 28 sonnets then at the end are addressed to the Dark Lady. As I said, that is Mona. Mona represents our Dark Lady. So Da Vinci, this is where John Dee's encryption comes to light. We have the 1/14, it creates the 007. So John Dee was the person who supposedly left that as his autograph. That was his encryption. Was the 007, he would known to leave the eyes of Queen Elizabeth, and Dee would use the signature. So we have the 2 eyes of Queen Elizabeth and the alchemist's lucky number, which is number 7. So Da Vinci, of course, he puts in the number 126 as well. He's put that in the top corner. So it's not just a part of Shakespeare's coding, it's a part of Da Vinci's coding as well. For me, it goes to St. John the Baptist. Now, as I said, remember with the twins, they were baptized. Shakespeare's data or baptized data is based on the baptism. So, John 126, I baptize with water, but among you stands one you do not know. Right, thanks. Dimensions, 69 centimetres plus 57 centimetres. They're the dimensions of Da Vinci's St. John the Baptist. Equals 126, so he's applied that coding, the same coding that he's put into the Vitruvian Man. So he represents Midsummer and Cancer, of course, number 69. So in Florence, where the patron saint of Florence is St. John the Baptist, the summer solstice period, I think it's for about 24 days or something, takes place at 69 degrees. The meridian, midday meridian, takes place at 69 degrees. So you've done it really, really well. So if you go to Italy, a lot of the cathedrals and the Duomos, etc., they all have meridian lines. You can see astrology takes form in their cathedrals far more than it does in ours. And it's because ours have been stripped, they've whitewashed our cathedrals, they've took all this knowledge away from us. John Divine, he represents midwinter, whereas St. John the Baptist represents midsummer. So as I said before, St. John, he has 2 feast days. One comes in December and one comes in September. It was only just yesterday. So with the 96 days remaining. So that was always relevant to me is because I come from Liverpool, of course, with the Hillsborough disaster. We had 96 Liverpool fans, remember the 96. Liverpool is well known for St. John. We have St. John's Tower, St. John's Beacon and everything else in Liverpool. We're based around St. John. So we had to remember 96, and of course Hillsborough took place on Leonardo da Vinci's birthday. So that was always relevant to me, it was something I played out. So they represent the 2 pillars of Freemasonry. That's who St. John the Baptist and the Divine are. They represent the 2 pillars of Freemasonry, and they represent the midsummer and midwinter. It's really what it's all based around. So the sonnets, ratio of the sonnets, now this is where we start creating the pyramid code. So the ratio of the sonnets gives us the ratio of the pyramids. So we have the 126 sonnets to the fair youth, 28 sonnets to the dark lady. So 8 of the sonnets consist of 126 words also. So Menkauri's pyramid has a height of 126 cubits. Khufu's pyramid has a height of 280 cubits. They're giving us the pyramid ratio with the ratio of the sonnets, which is a very clever thing to be doing. So Alan Green, of course, he's found a lot of alignments on these central pages, and he's, as I said, it'd be worth studying Alan Green's work alongside this to really break it open in a deeper way. So Menkauri's pyramid is a conceptual prototype of the Great Pyramid, and that is literally how it works out. It's Mike Menkauri is a prototype for it. So they've used that to build the Greater Pyramid. So these are the proportions that we come out with: 280 over 126 and 440 over 198. Now that's the height to the base. They're giving us our pyramid ratios. So that's where the sonnets are based on. We've got pyramid ratios within the sonnets. So 20 over 9 times 126 gives us our royal cubit. 126 times 2, 252, and 126 times 6 equals 756. So pyramids, Khufu's pyramid has a base length of 252 yards, which is equal to 756 feet. The moon during apogee is approximately 252,000 miles from Earth, and Venus has an approximate diameter of 7,560 miles. So they've implemented the measures of the planets and the cycles, because the cycles, of course, we're going round in a circle. It's the Great Circle. So we've got them implemented into the pyramid dimensions of the moon and Venus. So then that tells us that we're not just looking at a pyramid of the sun, a pyramid of the moon. We're looking at something that's more representative of a compass rose, of a magnet. The pyramids, of course, are aligned to the cardinal points of a compass. So that is really what we're looking at. We're looking at a compass rose. Mona Lisa, 2.52 feet in height. Shakespeare is born on a date that leaves 252 days of the year remaining. Giza Pyramid, 252 yards at the base, which forms the perimeter of 3,024 feet. The Sacred Lake at Karnak Temple is 252 feet. The moon at apogee and Florence Cathedral was opened on the 252nd day of the year. So this is the same encryption that's playing out. It's all the same part of Da Vinci's coding is represented inside Florence Cathedral. Florence Cathedral actually has the entire coding of the Mona Lisa, which tells us everything we need to know of where Da Vinci learned the celestial knowledge, so to speak. So Shakespeare, again, he's part of this code. There's a numerical code in there playing out. It's 252. So Shakespeare then, he was born, of course, St. George's Day, and they say he died St. George's Day. That's what they give us. You might be familiar with the one code in Alan Green started to break open in his work was 624. You see Shakespeare lived for a total of 624 months. Now, Alan Green says that leads to De Vere's grave. It leads to the gravestone of Edward De Vere, which I don't actually agree with. I know what that number represents. So I can't agree with Alan Green on that one. But Alan's not published this. This is something I tried to send to Alan. He's ignored the message. But I was trying to let him know that Shakespeare, the coding that he's found, is also in Shakespeare's birth and death dates, exactly 624. So William Shakespeare is born on the 113th day of the year, 252 days remaining. Of course, this is St. George's Day, and then he was baptized on April 26th, 1564. So this is, again, it gives us the numerological coding that Alan Green was working with, the 264, 624, and all its permutations. All plays out the same. William equals 246 in primes, gematria. So the Great Pyramid then, William Shakespeare, it's all a part of his pyramid coding. Of course, we have the 1616 and 1564, then dates will become very relevant. So the 117, these are pyramid ratios. Of course, it's 11 times 7, gives us the 77. This is explicitly integrated through the measure of the four sides, 440 royal cubits, which is a multiple of 11. The design of the Great Pyramid is based on the ratio of 11 to 7. The ratio of the Great Pyramid perimeter of its height is 1,760 over 280 cubits. This is very close to 2 pi. So obviously this is, again, it's pi, it's relatable to that circle. The circle is the most simple thing that we can work with, and it breaks open so much information as well. So the tau is the ankh. Giza was anciently referred to as Ross Tau. It was known as the Rose Cross. This is information that Robert Edward Grant, I believe, brought to light, but it's not actually his information. He's got that from some older books that I was reading. So Mona Lisa is kept as well in room 711 at the Louvre. So again, they're giving us them little clues. If you can pick them up along the way, the clues are all there. Now, the organisation now known as the Grand Lodge, of course, was founded on St. John's Day in 1717, and Judith and Hamlet give us that unification of opposites. One died age 11, the other dies age 77, and the procreation starts with sonnets 1 to 17. So there's a 117, it really is the pyramid code that it plays out. So the 64 coding, now this is what Alan Green was trying to really get to, and I recognised it from something. And it wasn't what he was saying it was. It was definitely not leading to Edward de Vere. It was leading to John Dee and to a full Kabbalah coding. So this is John Dee's practical magic. This is the Enochian tables. Looks very, very complicated. What we've got is we've got 4 grids of the 12 times 13 squares. 12 times 13 equals 156. So you might have noticed earlier on when I put Mona Lisa's dates up, she's born on the 15th of the June. It's 15th of the 6th. She's born on that very same date. So we've got 156 times 4 equals 624. And of course, William Shakespeare was also born in 1564. We have the 156 times 4. It produces this, and it's the number of Babalon. So it is literally the number of Babalon. This is what Crowley gave us as well. He told us straight, it is the number of Babalon. So we have, for as the mother, she is 3 by 52, and as the harlot, she is 6 by 26, but she is also 12 by 13. And this is what Crowley was putting into his work. He was putting in the work of John Dee. So Babylon is a Venusian intelligence with myriad aspects. She has many universal qualities. She is specifically understood as an erotic primal intelligence. It really sums up everything, really, what the Mona Lisa is. Where Babylon is spelled within the angelical or so-called Enochian language channeled by Dee, and it adds up to number 156 using Hebrew gematria. So he's included Babylon into this coding. A lot of these numbers along the side you might recognise. In particular, 576, that's the height of Glastonbury Tor. So you have Glastonbury Tor and St Michael's Tower. It's a total height of 576 feet. The perimeter of St Michael's Tower, inside the tower, is 144 inches on each wall. Gives us 576 inches in perimeter. So they've implemented the same thing that Dee's implementing in his research. So the square, there's only one square on this table, on the 4 tables, that has 2 letters, and it is square number 481. And you'll notice over there, I forgot I had that clicker thing, AE. So over there with the AE, that's where he puts it in square number 481. The square, it's the English name for Egypt, of course, was Egyptus, or it's spelt with the AE. So the Great Pyramid of Egypt, of course, is 481 feet. So that was what Dee was putting in, a little clue into the height of the pyramid, into his work. This is where he found it all, though. It's all Hermetic Kabbalah. It's always going to lead us back there. So this, a little bit more complicated. The table consists of square grids. Each grid is 7 by 7 equaling 49. So that's what we have: 1 grid, 2 grid, 3 grids, 4, 5, and going across. He has 7 by 7 and then 7 down. So there are 7 grids of 49 squares going from left to right, 7 grids going top to bottom. 7 times 49 equals 343. So that gives us, again, our 7 times 7 times 7. It's our 777 number of Kabbalah. That's why it was so important to John Dee. 7 times 7 equals 49 grids of 49 squares. It gives us a total of 2,401 squares. So the book, Liber Logo F, it consists of 49 great letter tables and squares made up of 49 by 49 letters. However, each table has a front and back side, making 98 tables. So this is very much of what we find with the Hebrew alphabet and what's known as Jacob's Wheel, or the gates of Kabbalah. So John Dee, he says, I am therefore to instruct and inform you according to your doctrine delivered, which is contained in 49 tables, in 49 voices or callings, which are the natural keys to open those. Not 49, but 48, for one is not to be opened. Gates of understanding, whereby you shall have knowledge to move every gate. So this is one of his conversations with an angel, and this is what John Dee was doing. So when he's talking about gates, he's talking about those gateways of Kabbalah. And that's exactly what the Vesica creates. It creates a lens or a gate. It creates a gateway, the oval. So that's what I found very interesting with Alan Green's research. So in the Bible, he says that, of course, his coding leads him to the gravestone of Edward de Vere. There's several choice words that appear when discussing contagious diseases. The Vere appears in the Tanakh 49 times. So now that's a Kabbalah coding. So he says that this leads us directly to De Vere's grave. Now this led him directly to De Vere's grave at the exact same time that this world was experiencing all that can be described as a plague, basically. The Ten Commandments in the original Hebrew, biblical Hebrew, are the Ten Devarim, the Holy of Holies, where the tablets with the Ten Commandments were held in the first and second Jewish temples. So these are the various different spellers, De Vere, Deva, and DBR. So it's, as you'll notice from here, it's exactly the same as he's found on the gravestone. But this, of course, means plague. So then on December 8th, 2020, then the first male to be vaccinated in the UK was William Shakespeare. And it was a very good play on current events, I would suggest. So what you make of that is really up to you. I'm not going to put my opinions onto you. You can make of it what you will. But when that leads directly to De Vere, and we're going through a plague situation. So what I will say as well is one place was made the epicenter of Corona, and that was Lombardy, and that is where House Bardi come from. And that's where the Bard code started. And you can look into that as much as you want. But the Jubilee, so the Jubilee is the 49 total years. So it's 7 cycles. So we've just had a Jubilee period, of course. That's when Queen Elizabeth passed. She passed just after she had lit the Tree of Life during their Jubilee. So you might remember she lit the tree and it coiled through the gardens, and the 69-foot tree was lit. So of course Queen Elizabeth died, age 96. Remember the 96. Always remember the 69 and the 96. So the 50-year deals is where land, property and property rights are given back, basically, and we're released from years of servitude. So we've just gone through a very, very ritualistic period of time over these last 4 years. I'm sure many of you have felt that as well. So you shall count the 7 Sabbaths of years, 7 times 7 years, and there should be to you the days of 7 Sabbaths. This is really John Dee's coding. He's just implemented it as Enochian Magic. But of course, Enoch comes from the Bible. It is Enochian Magic. Enoch is Metatron, it's the cube. So it's all cubic magic that he's working with, and it's all placed into the Bible as well as the Jubilee. So this is some work by Patrick Mulcahy that I'll just go on to just quickly because it is important. And he's talking about esoteric harmonics and the frequency that forms everything in this reality. So he says it's not generally known, but the standard Western system of musical pitch in part approximates to the same frequency pattern as our solar system. So as I said, it's as above, so below, and it's orbital resonance, it's frequency that we play out to. This should come as no surprise, since the universe can be thought of as an enormous cluster of interwoven, vibrating energy waves. Indeed, it could be said that the vibrations that compose our universe represent the reverberating sound of the voice of God, which is Om, which is your Om phallus. That's the voice of creation, the voice of God. And this is how many people connect when they're meditating, of course. So Patrick Mulcahy gives us those exact frequencies that John Dee's given us. John Dee's given us in the 1500s. Patrick's given it to us without having the awareness of John Dee's work. He doesn't actually know. He's just focusing on these esoteric harmonics, as he terms them. So we start at the 49 hertz, which is where John Dee starts his magic. And eventually we go to the 98 hertz, 147 hertz, which is Jacob's wheel. Jacob died at the age of 147 years old in the Bible. And then we go all the way up to 343 hertz, which you might remember is created from the 7 times 7 times 7. So this was all a part of John Dee's practical magic, esoteric harmonics, vibrations. Now this is metaphysical magic, and this is deep knowledge to have this back then. So this is why I say we're nowhere near as advanced as we was at one time. Because people like John Dee have shown it. They're showing things that we're only just breaking the tip of now and starting to understand again. So it's like an enlightenment period, the golden age is coming back around, and this knowledge is coming to the forefront. So we can relate these 7 frequencies to the 7 chakra, and 7 days a week, 7 lights, and everything else. It's all the 7. Number 7, the most important number in this reality, really. So these are just, I just wanted to share this quickly because it is the vibration, it's part of them harmonics, it's part of the creation story. Now what it does go with is the Masonic speed of sound. So the clue in Masonic for me is the fact that it has sonic in it. It's the sonic speed of sound. I think that's the most important thing. And I think that's what they don't tend to share in Freemasonry at all. So the speed of sound is distance traveled per unit of time. While sound travels at 343 meters per second in air, it travels at 1,481 meters per second in water. So again, we've got that 343, but it's the speed of sound and air. So how would John Dee have had this knowledge all that way back then? They've known the esoteric harmonics all the way back then, and they've used it as well. He's implemented it, not only in this, but they've implemented it in the Bible, they've implemented it in Shakespeare's work and in Da Vinci's work. Now this is about power over humanity, basically, but they've got the knowledge to do so. So in theory, the speed of sound is actually the speed of vibration. Sound was in solids, are composed of compression waves and a different type of sound wave called a shear wave, which occurs only in solids. Shear waves in solids usually travel at different speeds than compression waves, and it's as exhibited in seismology. So seismology, the activity of mountains being formed, again, it's the Ben Stone, it's creation. So this is the vibration it creates, it's the oscillation of the mountains that are created. So John Dee was obviously he was very popular under Queen Elizabeth. So the change of the British mile came from 1,481 metres to 1,609 metres. So again, you'll recognise the 169 because the sonnets were released in 1609. So John Dee has changed the reference of our mile. He's changed the measure. And it was always done in metres as well. This is something that's important because I know John Michel was against the metre. I've found something in the metre system that really breaks everything open and it really unlocks it. Now that metre system has come from ancient Egypt, that's without a doubt. I can say that without a doubt. So the 1,481 metre measure, that's a Roman measure. That's come from the Roman mile, and John Dee would then implement his own measure with the 1,609 metres. So as a well-respected navigator, Dr. John Dee is thought to have coined the term the British Empire. To him, the empire was Arthur, King of the Britons. That was how he'd seen it, because it was based on the Round Table. Of course, he was an astrologist, amongst other things. One of his great loves was astrology. So Arthur's Round Table, as we see it, is all based on pie in the sky, as one of my friends called it, Kevin Clark. So he terms it as pie in the sky, and it really represents that circle. So Jacob, as I said, he died at 147 years old. His death is revealed in Genesis 49:33. 3 times 49 equals 147. They give us Jacob's age within the very verse that he dies in. So this is Jacob's wheel. The wheels, these wheel angels are described as a wheel inside of a wheel, and are located near the perimeter of the Lord's heavenly chariot or Merkaba. So of course this is Ezekiel's wheel as well. It's the same thing in the Bible, but it's Kabbalah wheels is what it is. They just don't call it Kabbalah in the Bible. They just give it a different name. So we have Merkaba. Of course, the clue is in the Kaaba. It's the cube. So that cube, when you spin the cube, spin the rotation of creation, it forms the Merkaba, is the spin. So the sun aligns over the Kaaba in Mecca on the 147th day of the year, the 148th. This is again all based on Jacob and on these allegories, I suppose we can call them, that we're playing out. So the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation and book of formation, again, it's the procreation story, it is formation. The best way to understand the formation in this reality, I think, is the Platonic solids and the elements. They really break open, and then you can move into the periodic table and you see the structure of everything, which is mostly cubic, it's hexagonal, it's mostly cubic, by design. So we have the 22 foundation letters of the Hebrew alphabet. He placed them in a circle like a wall with 231 gates. The circle and the gates oscillates backwards and forwards. So this is what John Dee was giving us as well. He said that the angel told him to pay attention to those gates. If you unlock the 48 gates, you will have access to God's creation, basically, and you can create, you can form your own life. So this is abracadabra, it's from the Hebrew Ibra Kadabri, and it literally means I create as I speak. So your voice is powerful. Of course, you can feel the reverb in your chest when you speak. It's all about the vibration. So this is why we've got to be very careful with our words. Be sure to uplift and encourage one another instead of putting people down. Words very powerful. So that's Jacob's story is given in Genesis 49:3, and of course it's Genesis, so it's genes. It's all about the family tree and creation and how it comes to fold. So the 231 lines connecting the 22 letters are called the 231 gates. This means simply that the gateway of creation is through the combination of letters which represent divine powers. So as we move forward, as I said, I recognise the coding of 624 246, and it's because it comes from Kabbalah. So I recognise that instantly when I've seen it. And I've recognised that Alan Green was using Hermetic Kabbalah in his work. Whether he's aware of it or not is another thing, I'm not too sure. I know Robert Edward Grant and Alan Green both speak about magic a lot in their research. So this is the 21 times 22 equals the 462 possible permutations of the two-letter subroots of the Hebrew alphabet. Since each letter, two-letter subroot has permutations, there are therefore 462 over 2 equal 231 possible combinations. Now this is all a little bit complicated just in this instance. I'd recommend you really study Jacob's Wheel and Kabbalah, the gateways that oscillate backwards and forwards and create this. There's only so much I can give you in this short space of time. So that's something that really needs to be studied, and it's based on the Hebrew alphabet and how we speak. Again, it is, I create as I speak. So the 462 gates and the 624, it creates that Kabbalah tree of life. Again, it is all based on creation, and it's going to be the same theme right the way through. So this is the Hermetic Kabbalah, it's known as the cube of space. It's the Kaaba in Mecca, it's exactly the same thing. As the Kaaba is, it's directed to the cardinal points and the ordinal points. So we have our north, east, south, west, of course. So this is where the Hebrew alphabet is arranged, and this cube really just opens it up, and it's the story of Adam and Atum. Adam is, of course, carbon. It's the carbon cube. It's man. It's mankind. So each gate is a simple geometric form. There are 38 lines, 2 sephirot and 1 path, 68 triangles, 74 quadrangles, 41 pentangles. Now, I've included this in the presentation more so for anybody that does want the presentation at the end and wants to study this information. It's for people who really want to study it. So these are the gates anyway. These are the gates of Kabbalah. So it's the tetrahedron grids, the tree of life grids, tetractys, and the multi-dimensional polygons that are made out of Hebrew letters. This is our metaphysical reality that's being created. So this is what it looks like. It forms the hypercube with the 22 Hebrew letters around the outside. Now it forms a hypercube or a mandala or whatever you'd like to call it. It's sacred geometry at the end of the day. It's the architect's sacred geometry. So this is what the 624 code is. It's what 264 is, represents. It doesn't just represent St. John the Baptist, it represents those gates of Kabbalah. So as we've proven from the very start with the twins, it was Hermetic Kabbalah playing out, and this is why Alan Green's found it. And it's taken them to the gravestone of De Vere, of course, and things are playing out. So the Hendekaract is what we're looking at. With that, it's a 22-sided polygon, so each side of the polygon represents a Hebrew letter of the alphabet. Now this is a hypercube, and it depends how you see that image there. It really depends. It's all about your perspective. You can see it in 2D or 3D, and that's a big aspect of this reality, is how we perceive it. So the polygons and the hypercubes, they sum up this reality, and they sum up through height, width, depth, and time, which is really as the hold on this construct. So this is metaphysical reality. This is why I went to CERN recently. So this is a picture from when I've just visited CERN last week. This is a hypercube that they have at CERN. So this is because this is the story of Adam and the Kaaba and the cube. It's hexagonal, and of course, a 3D version of that, of a square. It forms the cube. Go into 4D, we have the tesseract. This is what they're showing. It's a story of creation. You are the cube. When you open up and become enlightened, you become christened, you become Christ on the cube. So that's how the net of a cube, of course, unfolds. It's Jesus on the cross. So this, some of you might be familiar with this from John Michel's work. So bottom left corner is John Michel's template for New Jerusalem. So what you'll see is it's all the same. We have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, right the way across. And it's all the same. Now this is the Cosmati at Westminster. And you'll see it's exactly the same. So this is where I'm talking about perspective. John Dee has given us that 2D version. It's flat. But if you can perceive it as the cosmos, and it takes geometric form, this is exactly what he's showing. He's showing the exact same thing. Now this is, of course, another version of his cosmos, in a sense. He's given us the 12 around the 1, given us the 13 the Crowley also gives us. So again, New Jerusalem is what we're looking at, basically. We're looking at the cube. New Jerusalem in the Bible is described as the cube. And these pictures are all the same. We have the 3 on each side, and the cross in the middle, or we'll have the lamb. and it's New Jerusalem, but it's the cube, and this is what the key is with John Michel's work, is breaking open that cube. It's really what he done really well. So this is a story of creation, but this is in Hindu cosmology, or to the Buddhists, etc. It's the Bindu. So this forms, you've got the 2D geometry, which forms the 3D temple. So this is all, again, it's all about perspective. If you can see that as a 3D temple, you'll be on the right track to actually be able to perceive how things are put in our face. So this, again, it's just another story of a mountain being formed. The Hindus have the exact same creation story as the Mayans, as the Egyptians. It's all about that sacred mountain, or to me, Mona. That's what the sacred mountain is to me in my research, it's Mona. So this is my version of the Last Supper, which I don't know if some of you will be familiar with. So of course we have the procession of the equinox. Now Da Vinci does the exact same thing as John Michel's work. On this slide we have the 3, 3, 3, 3, and he creates those 3, 3 for the apostles. So he's given us the seasons. But what he's done, he goes from Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, and a lot of people will say Mary Magdalene. It's most definitely not. It is John, who represents Libra. Otherwise this entire procession would be out of order. It wouldn't make any sense. So on top of that then, I was recently in Milan. I went to see the Last Supper just a couple of weeks ago. I was speaking to the tour guide there, and I was explaining the fact that Mary Magdalene's position is very clear. She just isn't there because she's not meant to be there. But Mary Magdalene's position in the Last Supper is very clear, and it forms the inverted triangle of the female, which we know as the chalice or the Holy Grail. So this is what Dan Brown was really shown in the Da Vinci Code book and film. Dan Brown knows a lot more than he lets on. For instance, he released that book on the 77th day of the year. He knows the code, he knows Da Vinci's coding. So yeah, this is what I developed of how I see it. Jesus taking form with the red and the blue robes. He's the androgynous form. That's what Da Vinci always done. He's both aspects, the male and female, forming the sun and the moon. Jesus and Mary coming together as one. So Mary's never had to have been in that image. Her place is there. He's left her a place of where she should be. And John is far too important to leave out of the Last Supper. So of course what we've got here, we've got the merging of the male and female, and this is known as the Holy Communion. So the union of the opposites, again, coming together, and that's what it was all based on. So this is Da Vinci's, and it's very clear what he's done with the 36 grid. It's the magic square of the sun. Jesus is the sun, of course, and we have the seasons. There's some people have broke open, of course, musical codes in this painting. There's some really good work. So the dimensions, not really relevant to this at the moment, but it's basically his dimensions are 8.8 meters by 4.6, and that gives us the diameter of the sun. And in feet, he gives us dimensions that equal 432, which shows the radius of the sun. So we implemented this in the Vitruvian Man as well. It's exactly the same. It's all the same information. So he's given us the Shakona, the Star of David, of course, which is supposedly the lineage. But what it is Metatron's cube, really. And this is where, again, we say about perspective, where it's 2D. We move into the 3D and the Tesseract, and it forms that cube. So this is the cube of Saturn, what people will say. A lot of places worship Saturn, but Saturn's the god of time, of course. Time is one of the main components of this construct, along with height, width, and depth. So looking at different polygons and hypercubes, most popular hypercube in my research is based on the seven-sided polygon, which is the tomb of Christian Rosenkreuz as well. So you'll see the geometry used inside this tomb. So we have the heptagon and the heptagram. The heptagram internal angles are 77 degrees. They'd have to be, of course, because this is Christian Rosenkreuz, of course. It's the legendary founder, leader of the Rosicrucian Order. And of course, Crowley's sigil that he used was the heptagon as well, or the heptagram. So this is their magic. It's based on this. This is their sigil. So my research shows me the hepteract hypercube, which is known as the 7 cube. So this is a higher dimension to our reality. We're in a 4th dimensional reality now. So these are higher dimensions, and this is where probably what John Dee was accessing was higher dimensions, higher thought processes, and he was able to connect to them some way. Now I believe this is the most important to our reality, with it being the 7 cube and the number 7 being so relevant in this reality to everything we know. So these details, it really just forms part of Mona's coding, which is why I've included this, but the height and the circumference also, you'll notice the year that the Masons were founded for the 1717 on St. John the Baptist's Day. This is basically God to them. This is God. You look at it as a symbol of God. This is their hypercube structure. So this is God. This is one of the most important pieces of geometry. So the legendary, possibly allegorical founder of the Rosicrucian Order was Christian Rosenkreutz. His manifestos were published throughout the 17th century, and they were Fama Fraternitas, 1614. His next one was 1615, and then we had the Chemical Wedding in 1616, which is the year that Shakespeare died. So that's when the Rosicrucian Order decided to bring out that very famous popular manifesto. So Christian Rosenkreutz died apparently in 1484. His death came 77 years after the foundation date of the Rose Cross in 1407. And you'll remember Jacob died at age 147. The sun aligns over the carbon on the 147th day of the year. It's all the same Hermetic coding that they've brought back, basically. The Templars have brought it back from Islam. So the key with this is, in 1484, the founder of Roston Chapel also died, William St. Clair, and that's where we can give them both. They're both the same people, really. So we've got the legendary founder, and then we've got the real founder of the Rose Cross. So William St. Clair, of course, this is the Templar family. Bernard of Clairvaux is the clue with the Templars. But the St. Clairs actually go back to ancient Greece, to the Temple of Claris. They're known as seers. So St. Clair means clear, seeing clear, it's clear vision, and it's where we get clairvoyance from now. It comes from the St. Clairs. So William St. Clair died in the same year as Christian Rosenkreutz, and of course we have Rothschild is the Rose Cross with Giza. So the Rose Theatre, this is something that I know Dan Brown really started to break open in his work. Now, of course, these are known as novels, but if you know these coding and you understand what Dan Brown's put into them books, it's very important stuff. So, as I said earlier on, the rose line in Dan Brown's was the Paris Meridian. So my research shows Leonardo's celestial knowledge to go back to the Florence Meridian line, a very, very important meridian line that was created in the 1400s. So these are from our recent travels. This is the Basilica of Santa Maria Novella in Florence. So the Florence Meridian, it starts in Svalbard, in Norway, at 7920 degrees. So you'll know that is the 7,920 mile diameter of planet Earth. So they've encoded, and that's where it starts, that's a meridian. They're using Earth measure, which is basically what geometry is based on. Geometry means Earth measure. That's exactly what it is. So this is the meridian line. As I said, this isn't hidden in Italy. It's all in public view, and it's in every church and cathedral you go to. You get to really get a sense of the astrological aspects inside these buildings, which is what was stolen from us. And if they're stealing it from us, it's because they don't want us to have it for a reason, of course, because it's a huge benefit. So today's prime meridian is, of course, in Greenwich. Now, these meridians are very important. Some people believe that the Great Pyramid of Giza was once the prime meridian. And even in 1884, it was in fact discussed to be the prime meridian. So the Rose Theatre then, we're looking at polygons now. We're looking at the polygon shape of these theatres. So the Rose Theatre was excavated in 1989, and it's said to have 14 sides to it. Now you remember the sonnets, 14 sonnets. Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man into 14 lines, Osiris into 14 pieces. The Rose Theatre now, we've got the rose, of course. It has to be the rose, because a rose by any other name would smell just as sweet. So they give us the Rose Theatre. So this was built by Philip Henslow, very, very important person. And he had connections to a Montague, which is really what really started to break open this coding for me at the beginning when I first looked into it. I started to look into Philip Henslow. So they produced this, and the theatre was built on a mesuage called the Little Rose, which Henslow had leased from the parish of St Saviour, Southwark, in 1585. The Rose was the first of several theatres to be situated at the bankside. So this is where Shakespeare's encryption was first founded, basically. His plays and everything else were first formed in the Rose Theatre, although no author was ever named for the plays, not until a much later date. So the Rose Theatre then, it is a 14-sided polygon, about 72 feet in external diameter, The inner space was also a 14-sided polygon. So this is doubtless, it is what it's based on, and it's for a purpose. So now I said before about the heptaract hypercube. The version of this in a 2D version is known as a tetradecagon. So what we'll notice is the 14-sided polygon, but it also has internal angles of 154 degrees, which means the Rose Theatre is based on the sonnet. So the sonnet is based on the encryption of the Rose Theatre. So it's exactly the same, 154 sonnets, 154 degrees, 14 lines per sonnet, 14 lines in a 14-sided polygon. And this is what the Rose Theatre was based on at the beginning. So it's all got to be done perfectly, of course, because I create as I speak. And what are they doing? They're standing on stage in front of all these people. They're creating as they speak. And of course, William Shakespeare's plays, they were all political agendas at the time. They were all different agendas that were playing out, and they wanted to give that perspective to the general public, because our perspective creates our reality, hence why everything's so negative in the world. So Philip Henslowe, he was the Elizabethan theatrical entrepreneur and impresario. Now, is really a starting point for me was the fact that he was in connection with Henry Woodward and Anthony Brown, who was the first Viscount of Montague. So as I said, the Montagues are one of the most important families in Shakespeare's entire encryption. So in 1584, Henslowe purchased the property known as the Little Rose in Southwark, and then his diary would be released in 1609, the same as the sonnets. But then Philip Henslowe also went on to die in the same year as Shakespeare. So Henslowe's diary is one of the most valuable pieces of information. It's one of the most valuable sources that they have to this day, and it gives them a clear view of how things would have been at that time. So they've got record payments to writers, box office takings, lists of money lent. Everything is there inside. So Henslowe recorded payments to 27 Elizabethan playwrights, all named below: Thomas Middleton, Henry Chettle, George Chatham, so on. Performances of these work and titles similar to Shakespearean plays such as Hamlet, Henry VI, Part 1, Henry V, The Taming of the Shrew, and Titus Andronicus, mentioned in the diary with no author listed. So this is important, of course. The records for William Shakespeare simply don't exist. If they did, people would prove it a long time ago. The records just simply do not exist. So there's no mention of William Shakespeare or Christopher Marlowe, Robert Greene, Thomas Kidd, or any university wit writer or figures like Richard Burbage for that matter. In Henslowe's diary, not one of them are named, not one of them. So it's telling us, again, it's telling us some important information at that moment in time. So Philip Henslowe, he died in 1616. Of course, William Shakespeare died in 1616. The Chemical Wedding in 1616. The invitation of the royal wedding includes a symbol invented and described by John Dee in his 1564 book, Monus Hieroglyphica. So, of course, now we've got the Monus again. We've got Mona, the Monad, the Mona Lisa. She is the source. So Dee's Monus Hieroglyphica presents a complex emblem constructed from various astrological symbols with elements of Latin wordplay. So what he's actually done, of course, he's included Mercury, Hermes in this, but he has got the monad symbol, and it's the great circle, and that's the source of everything, and that is, as long as he's got that, he's got the totality. So this is, of course, this is to access hidden knowledge transcending linguistic barriers. So I'll be honest, this is something I've focused on over these past 4 years, is this monad symbol. And the information I've had through over these past 4 years has just been insane. It's a lot to take in. I'm even standing before you today and presenting this information is mind-blowing for me from where I've come from. So this is merging of astrology, alchemy, mysticism, and metaphysics. Now that metaphysical part can't be more important. Keep that in mind at all times. This is metaphysical. We had the recent Facebook change from Facebook to Meta, of course. It's all a metaphysical reality, and they will shape reality on these social media pages because it's all advertisements thrown at people constantly. That's all it ever is. So this is Dee's interconnected worldview. So the Rose Theatre, it's a 14-sided polygon known as a tetradecagon. It's 154 degrees. The coordinates for the Rose Theatre are 51 degrees, 30 minutes, 25.92 seconds. Now you might recognise that 2592. The Rose Theatre you'll get is 25.92 degrees north. This is, of course, the precession of the equinox. So this is what Da Vinci gives us again. This is the Last Supper. He gives us 3 in 1 for the seasons. And this is Da Vinci's Last Supper playing out. So this is what was coded at the Rose Theatre directly. It was all about the procession again, it's the same story playing out. So the 14 lines per sonnet, 154 sonnets that were published in 1609. So Da Vinci was also born on the 15th of the 4th, which is, I term as the great architect. So St. Peter's Square now, just to back those coordinates up that little bit, we also have St. Peter's Square, Vatican City. It's at 7.92 degrees and 25.92. Now this in the center is an astrology wheel, it's a zodiac wheel. Of course, we have the phallus symbol and we have the Vesica formed. It's exactly the same again, but we have earth measure, 7,920 miles, and the precession of the equinox. So of course, this is important because we have the compass rose. Shakespeare's globe, very important place. Now it has the Great Pyramid encoded in Shakespeare's globe. Geometry, the icosagon or the 20gon is the 20-sided polygon. The sum of any icosagon's interior angles is 162 degrees times 20 equals 3,240. So that produces the perimeter of the Great Pyramid, 3,024 feet. It's exactly the same. Now, that is further backed up by the fact that the globe's coordinates are 3024 north. They're putting these same proportions into the globe theatre that they did into the Great Pyramid. So the original globe then, it was built in 1519 and later demolished in 1644. This is important because we do have the 624 squares on this page, but John Dee has left another 20 in the middle, which takes it up to 644. It's the exact time the globe was demolished. So it's an important part of John Dee's work. So this is the ceiling of the globe theatre. This is the stage, this is the ceiling of the stage, is an astrology wheel. So this is the heavens, that's what they call it, the term is the heavens. So the globe, when you think of the globe, you've got to think of navigation. So this is John Dee's coding, of course, it's the globe, that's what they were all navigators of the seas. So John Dee as well, he had one of the biggest private libraries, and it was housed an impressive collection of maps and globes. So John Dee was a keen observer of the natural world, and he would influence English navigation and publish several works on the subject. So this is perfect art of navigation, celestial navigation. John Dee was one of the most well-respected navigators of that time, hence him being so connected to Queen Elizabeth and why she used them for what she did. So they would go and form the British Empire, they would go and divide the lands, and we'd end up where we are today, basically. So navigation is key, and to understand that is why we have the globe. That is when you go to Stratford-upon-Avon and you see all these different symbols, you see the ship and the globe. That ship is a representation of Argo Navis in astrology. It's the ship that circles the wheel. The precession. So again, it's all based on the meridian lines. This is really what it's based on. In 1884, the International Meridian Conference and the prime meridian for the world was moved over to London. So you recognise this 1884, it's the 481-foot measure of the Great Pyramid, or it's the 418 of these sigil of the Vesica. So this is Greenwich Park. The name Greenwich meaning green and Wick meaning village. So this is exactly what Osiris, the fertility, the afterlife on the Nile, it's exactly the same thing. It's exactly what it means. This is what they done. It was symbolising fertility of the land when the Nile River flooded, and it would produce carbon-rich soil, which takes us back to the reason Giza was alchem and alchemy, breaking open the chemical aspects of carbon. Carbondale was the centre point for the recent 2024 Great Eclipse, and that was known as Little Egypt, Carbondale. So the globe theatre apparently takes its name from the story of Hercules and Atlas. In Greek mythology, Hercules carried the heavens for a short time to help Atlas retrieve the golden apples. So Hercules' 12 labours, of course, it's a story again in the stars. It's the 12 signs, and he even fights the lion. He does all these battles with the animals. Zodiac comes from zodiac. It's the zoo. It's the animal. It's the zoo above our heads. That's the zodiac. So this is Hercules' 12 labours. Viewed from the myth of Hercules. So this is what the two pillars represent. So the two pillars, of course, are the twin pillars. They're the opposites, the unifying of the opposites, as we know from the Twin Tower event. Very important. So the pillar of Hercules, they represent those two pillars, as I said, was St. John the Baptist and St. John the Divine in Freemasonry as well. And it's a holy trinity brought together as one being. Now this writing here is from Peter Dawkins. He's explaining what these pillars, the pillars of Enoch, the pillars of Atlas, the pillars of Solomon, Boaz and Jachin, it's all the same thing. It's the same two-pillar symbolism that needs to be brought together to create a unity or an equilibrium of energy. So here we are, this is the twin pillars in Freemasonry, sun and the moon. it creates the 101. It is the 101, the pillars and arches is what they're creating. So it's the same as the Kabbalah tree of life. This is our pillar, twin pillar aspect. It's kind of having that, the angel and the demon on each shoulder talking to you. It's one of them. So it's all about polarity, because this construct is based on energy, of course. So it's about polarity. So this is what Mona Lisa represents. It's hard to see with the first image of Mona, but she's actually sat between two pillars. So she is is the representation. This is Mona. And you can see it better in other versions, the two pillars either side. So this is the two pillars of Freemasonry. She is the monad. She is the structure. That's what she is. She is the supreme being. So again, these are the two pillars. Atlas, Cosmographicae, it is the two pillars of the hemispheres. And this is again why you will often see in Freemason places, you'll see two pillars with two globes on either side. They represent the two hemispheres. So as I said, this is based on a compass rose. Everything's based on the compass rose. You'll see the Union Jack and the English flag. It's all based on the compass rose. It's exactly the same thing. It's our cardinal points and our ordinal points. And of course, you'll find cathedrals and churches of cardinals and ordinals. This is what they're based on. So this is St. George's flag, and keep that in mind because we're looking at an encryption that involves St. George. William Shakespeare is born on St. George's Day. So what does George represent? George is a literal meaning of earth worker. The word George comes from Gaia, comes from the globe. It's earth, that's what George represents. So when you're looking at the English flag, then you've got the north, east, south, west. That's our St. George's flag, it's the globe. It represents the compass. So it comes from geography, geometry, gematria. It all comes from that geo of earth and its earth measure. It's the structure of our planet. So this is really what the hidden clues are with St. George and why the St. George's flag is so prominent. So this is the Earth's actual tilt, and this is another reason what we have the globe theatre for and what the coding revolves around. So of course he's born the 23rd of the 4th, so it's 23.4 degrees is the axis of rotation. So Earth currently has an axial tilt of 23.44 degrees. This value remains about the same relative to a stationary orbital plane throughout the cycles of axial precession. So this is the same coding from the Vitruvian Man. Da Vinci puts in the axis points, he's showing the navel, it's axial precession. And Stratford upon Avon, Shakespeare's home, 4223 degrees. So this is really what Da Vinci's St. John coding is exactly based on. He's pointing, he's showing us the exact direction, the head tilt and the rotation of axis. He's putting it in there perfectly. So the centre of mass for the human body is slightly below the belly button by about 1 inch and close to the geometric centre of the body. This is just showing, again, the navel is the axis point. This is it's just below the navel, inch below actually. But this is the transverse plane, as he says here. It's the horizontal axial point. And this is where it comes from the navel. This is our power system. This is in chakra. It sends energy to all of the nodes around the body. It's our power system is in the centre. Sacred geometry then with the Great Pyramid of Giza. This is how it all evolved, and this is just some writing from Graham Hancock. Now it's what John Michel was giving us was the earth measures. It's the simple earth measures of the earth and the moon combined, and this sums up the square and the circle in many ways. Da Vinci done the exact same thing with the Vitruvian Man, and it's based on the measurements of the pyramid, of course. So as I said, compass rose pyramids of Giza have 8 sides, as any compass rose would, of the 8 winds. So it's a common compass rose is found as a nautical chart showing both true north and magnetic north. So this is nautical. We're dealing with navigation, of course, the navigators of the seas like John Dee and the globe. The pyramids are the lines that face the 4 cardinal directions. Giza was anciently known as Ros Tau, meaning the rose cross, or to them the mouth of the passages. So there is our rose cross. It's our compass rose. That's the official rose cross. And this is why it's so perfectly aligned. So we also have a representation of this in Greece, known as the Tower of the Winds, and it even has a representation of the 8 points of the compass rose, and it gives us the 8 winds: Notus, Lips, Zephyrus, Chiron, Boreas, Cacaeus. Zephyrus in particular features in Sandro Botticelli's Birth of Venus. She's the west wind, the west wind's blowing in, and Venus is basically coming through the ether, as it's all a Rosicrucian coding through the birth of Venus. So these are our 8 winds. And of course, the compass rose is known as the 8 winds of the compass rose. That's what they're giving us. And this is all astrological. This is as all astrology signs on the Tower of the Winds in Greece. So it's all based on the same thing. And of course, it's octagonal. It's 8 sides. It's the same as the pyramid, the octagonal base. So these, again, this is just the Society of Jesus. The Jesuits were founded in 1540, which takes us back to those 154 of the sonnets. And this represents the 32 wind compass rose. You'll notice the 32 points of this, of the sun, and Jesus represents the 33rd in the middle. This is exactly what they're showing, but we do have the points of the compass. Again, it's always based on the exact same thing. So the 33 degrees of Freemasonry, 33 degrees of the pyramid, the steps relative to the human spine. I think many people are aware of this now, that the body is a temple. But this is implemented into the pyramid. And it's about the illumination, the eye of illumination, and that's really what one of the main features of the pyramid is. So one of the tallest buildings in the world, of course, was the Great Pyramid until Lincoln Cathedral was built. And then we have the Eiffel Tower, which is built on the proportions of the Great Pyramid. That's literally what it was based on. They've based it on the Great Pyramid. So the Eiffel Tower is known as the Beacon of Light, and it's 330 meters in height. Then we have the Louvre inverted pyramid, which sits above this little pyramid, which is 3.3 feet in height. And then we have the Louvre pyramid, which is on the Paris axis with the Arc de Triomphe and Grand Arch hypercube. So that Paris axis line is their axis Mundi. They have a hypercube, they've got pyramids, they've got it all. So of course, Mona Lisa is at the Louvre. This is her pyramid code in room 711 at the Louvre. She is the pyramid code. She's the mound that rises from the primordial waters. So we have the Mona's Hieroglyphica, Mona Lisa, and the Monad. Sums it up very well. Mona Lisa's dimensions, 77 times 53. Da Vinci has given us the height of the pyramid in inches perfectly as well. So I think that's really, really good. So Mona Lisa, 77 times 53 equals 4,081. The Great Pyramid was 481 feet in height. So Da Vinci has encoded it into those dimensions. 77 times 53 also reveals the 753 year that Rome was founded by the twins Romulus and Remus. So there's another one. So this is Mona's dimensions, 77 centimeters and 53. This is what they convert to. You'll notice we have 30.24 inches, which is our pyramid code, the perimeter of the pyramid and the exact coordinates of the globe theatre. Mona Lisa equals 84. She is 0.84 yards. And this really is what we start to connect with Mona Lisa's coding. So not only is the Great Pyramid 5,773 inches, but it is the Vesica. And as I said, Osiris, his penis is swallowed by a fish. It's swallowed by the Vesica. This is what they've given us, the measure of the fish. And it's there, the height of Giza exactly, 5,773.5 inches is the height of the Great Pyramid. It's exactly the coding of the Vesica. So this is Mona Lisa encodes it all. She's got all of it within. So the 1.73 foot measure comes from the ratio of the Vesica. Da Vinci's given us it all. And as you can see, the Vesica runs across the top of Lisa's dress. And she was also created in 1503. Every detail of this is the Vesica, and every detail is the Great Pyramid. This is why it's leading Robert Edward Grant and Alan Green to the Great Pyramid. This is exactly why it is. So we've got the pyramid code, we've got the globe code, we've got Shakespeare's code and Da Vinci's code. So this is really what we've put together now. This is the Great Pyramid, and this is how it's formed. It's formed by those equilateral triangles coming together. This is the proportions of the fish. So of course that fish has swallowed the penis because all men enter victorious and leave feeling diminished, of course. So the Swiss pyramid, I recently went to Switzerland a couple of weeks ago just to see Christine. The Swiss pyramid and the Sphinx Observatory opens at 7:53 a.m. I always said, what type of place do you know that opens at 7:53 a.m? This is the Templars pyramid code. They've got the pyramid code. So when we got this, it was a great confirmation when we went there and visited. And it was one of the best days of my life being up on top of that Swiss pyramid. I absolutely loved it.
What's the finishing time? 317?
Sorry? 317, it's your 137's 33rd prime number, isn't it? So that's why they use it. It's a constant. It's what's it? Golden angle and everything else, isn't it? It's one of the structures of this. So Mona Lisa then, The Royal Egyptian cubit is encoded in Mona's dimensions. Da Vinci mirrored his writing, of course. So he's mirrored his writing. He gives us the 52.4 centimetre measure of the royal cubit. So this is implemented inside the King's Chamber. The King's Chamber is 5.24 metres in width and 10.48 metres in height. Now remember, the 148 number is Christos, of course. This is Christ's value in gematria.
Brilliantly, it's nearly 1:45.
Right, okay. I'm nearly there. I'm nearly there. Just right, so we've got the measure. So we use this measure today. It creates the measurement of the inch, which is 2.54 centimetres. We've implemented that same measure today. So it comes from the inch, which in Scotland is known as Innis, and that means island. So last year we went to Inchcolm. Inchcolm was known as Emona. It's because Mona is the island that rises from the primordial waters. So the inch is coded in Scotland with that. So this is, of course, King Tut's tomb. Coordinates, exactly the same, and it's so perfectly done. But what this is representing is the illumination. It's the white star, the blue white star of Sirius, which is 25.4 times the luminosity of the sun. So that is very important. Something that the Egyptians were most definitely working with at the time was light. The brightest star in the sky is Sirius. How would they have got that so perfectly? God only knows, I suppose. But it doesn't end there with them, because they pushed it even further. So the Great Pyramid of Giza is 146 metres in height. The apparent magnitude of Sirius is minus 146. The Sophic cycle of Sirius is 1,460 years. Sirius A, Sirius B are the binary twins, of course. The dog star is the God star. So this is all we need to do, is change our perspective. And what we've got the pyramid in the sky with the light of illumination. Sirius at the top of the pyramid. So of course they are binary twins. They form the Vesica as well. So here's the fish there. Eats the phallus of Osiris. So this is what the pyramid's all based on. It's all based on Sirius, of course, Isis and Osiris. So Jesus is referred to by names. I believe this is pronounced as Azus, actually, which is more like Jesus, but you know. And then we have Issa, Isus and Isos. Jesus is referred to as Gesu and Gesis, or Jesus in Italian. The name Isis and Isis are related to the word Isosceles, which is where we get our triangle from. And of course, we have our triangles in the sky. Not only the winter triangle, but also the summer triangle as well. And the meaning of Isosceles is equal man, equal woman. The polarities coming together, opposites attract. Of course, Osiris, Isis and Horus, the aeon of Horus is arriving, and it's the birth of the moon child. So this is the Isosceles triangle. So Isosceles or Isos, it means equal, and this is formed out of two equilateral triangles. And that is the as above, so below of the pyramid. And thank you for listening to me.